Did you want waffles?
Hello and welcome to the show that is on right now, today, at this moment in time. This is Warlocks and Waffles. Junie.
Cue the intro again.
Oh, man. Welcome to Warlocks and Waffles. Today is a very special episode because today is Groundhog's Day. I'm sure you're all aware. I'm sure you're all chomping at the bit, waiting for the inevitable word from our eldritch god, Puxatani Phil. Or Puxatani Pete? I don't know. It's one of
Phil.
them. Is it Phil? I'm glad I got
It's
it right
Phil.
on the first one. I do live in Pennsylvania. I should have gotten
I
that
thought it
right.
was part of an obligation to get past age 10 or something.
He's one of the gods of Appalachia. We are here talking about a very fun topic.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
No. Because you literally just said I didn't read the outline. So you don't know
I
what
didn't.
we're talking about.
I'll open the freaking outline.
I will give everybody a preview into
in my
behind the scene
defense.
post-production.
In my defense,
You do a lot.
This was not here when I woke up this morning.
That's fair. I did make it as
You made the outline while I was working on all the other stuff, so I could not have seen it.
The outline always exists for every episode. It's just a matter of, is it tailored? Anyway, welcome everybody. And then, aside from news that we don't know is or isn't happening, it's like sharing a hot take or something.
Mhm.
And I just, Hunter, do you want to just read what's right there under that bullet point?
Yeah, so on our outline it says, welcome the audience, introduce the show, share a hot take or interesting fact to grab the audience's attention. Sub bullet point, Junie's unhinged morning he didn't warn Hunter about.
Okay.
Which is a fun thing to see on an outline.
Correct. Now, check it out, yo. Now, if anybody has ADHD, you know that right before a thing, sometimes your creative juices, all the ideas hit you, right?
Yes.
Now, Hunter, I think we both woke up very similarly, oh man, it's one of those mornings, right?
I woke up at 5 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep, but I didn't want to get out of bed. And when I woke up at 5 a.m., I grabbed my phone to see what time it was, and Grace goes, "Oh, you're awake." And I'm like, "Yeah, why are you awake?" And she's like, "I've been awake since 3:30 and couldn't fall back asleep."
Oh my God.
So I don't know what was in the air at the Fell household yesterday, but it was we could not sleep.
Oh, we stayed up till 2 watching Survivor, but that's neither here nor there.
Good job.
So I got up and then I took a shower. Because it's one of those mornings where you need to just wash away the sleep, right? Sometimes I'm just I'm not going to get past anything unless I wash away sleep. And do you know how in a montage, you just see the middle, you just see parts of a conversation or you see parts of a planning process, but you don't see the full thing. I had one of those, but it wasn't until the third or fourth thing that I said, you didn't complete any thought. you didn't complete any sort of like nothing had a logical through line or how you got to that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just kind of no context,
Uh-huh.
just legitimately shoot you. These aren't pitches. This is just what was going through my brain, right? Um, at one point, I was just practicing like a boxing cut man like voice where I was like, "All right, Hunter, check it out. So I'm gonna show you." And I didn't know where I was going with it. Right? I just for a bit was just like gonna talk you to teach you something, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what or why or anything like that. Um, the next was I was gonna try to put on a suit because I decided that for Groundhog's Day they wear those fancy outfits.
Yeah, they get
Um,
real
they
real dolled up.
Yeah, so I was gonna like find the top hat and get off whatever and come up with the mechanics for the groundhog hunt, where the
Uh-huh.
groundhog hunts you, right? And I had like a bunch of like things about it. And then I was like, well, that might be a fun thing for the thing. And then I was like, what are you talking about? And then I stopped that one too. And then I made this cappuccino that I haven't drank yet. I haven't taken a sip from this yet. This is just me angry at myself right now. This is just pure Junie's just like, okay, he's having a morning. Um then Hunter experienced my mouse isn't working. All right. I clicked on a tab to drag it and then it stayed clicked and hovering. And then I have to use like my laptop mouse to do anything. So like I don't have a mouse right. No,
Mm-hmm.
I do have a mouse. It's just annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pain. It's easier to do things on my phone now to have it appear on my computer. Uh, oh my god, there was like four more things. Oh, I have these fingerless gloves. I don't know why I wanted to wear them, but I had them handy. I was gonna just wear fingerless gloves and start. Maybe I don't know why am I in a boxing mood. I was in a start shadow boxing. I don't know what was going on there. Uh, oh man, there was like another thing too. Uh, I definitely wanted to do something breakfast related. Uh, And you know what? I think I was planning on writing down the 3 or 4 more things, but then my mouse overshadowed all of that, and then it, like,
Yeah, you got
it got
real
out of there.
frustrated with your mouse this morning.
Yeah. The only things I managed to get down because I was like, "Oh, let me actually write some things down." I wrote down Bill Murray is cool. I copy and pasted a ton of groundhog facts. Um,
I did see there are an insane number of groundhog facts listed on our outline.
just a lot. J what's this one? Hold on. What? Groundhogs are loners and tend to keep themselves only seeking one another when it's time to mate. That's a free groundhog fact.
Mhm.
The rest will be on our
My favorite
Patreon.
one on there is that they have up to 80-foot long maze burrows. That's wild.
That's fun. I feel like they don't use it.
I personally hate groundhogs. Because
Whoa, you're
yeah,
definitely in the hot take session of the
yeah,
outline.
hot take. I hate groundhogs with a burning passion. There are a lot of groundhogs in our area. And we planted a garden a couple of years ago, and they devoured pretty much everything that was in my garden. They also just keep digging holes like under my fence
Oh,
into my yard, and they have dug all underneath my shed. And so I keep having to like fill in holes under my shed because they keep burrowing under there. And I'm just kind of waiting for my shed to sink into the ground because they've fully have burrowed underneath it. But yeah, every year I put out my dad has a groundhog trap that's like a catch and release one. And so every year I put that out, and every year I catch like 3 of them and take them far away, and I release them, and then I come back and I put the trap back, and I will catch another one, and I just keep catching groundhogs and removing them, and somehow they just keep coming to my yard and devouring my garden, and I
I have
don't
two.
like them.
I have two things. One, uh, are you sure it's not the same one?
I am sure some of
Okay.
they vary in size. Uh, you've seen my dog, right?
Yes.
Um, uh, I caught a groundhog that was larger than my dog.
Dope.
Groundhogs shouldn't be that big. That's terrifying. That is like a ground boar. It's not even a groundhog. Like that's a terrifying creature at that point. That's a dire groundhog.
That is a dire groundhog. It's a man. What do you what like? I've only seen one in the wild, and I
Mhm.
would say it was I don't know, it was maybe yay big. And I remember when
Mhm.
we were driving, we saw something. We are like, "What was that? Was that a raccoon or a dog?" And it's like, and the person was with me was like, "No, that was a groundhog." And it was like a Yeti sight, like like a Sasquatch
Yeah.
sighting, because we were like
Yeah.
just out of the corner of our eye, because we don't have them like that around here.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but the other thing I was gonna say is, like, when are you gonna acknowledge that's not your shed anymore? That's just not your shit anymore,
Yeah.
man. Like
It's
it's firmly on their property now. They have
yeah.
like dug it out, and it is this it's international waters because
They've
it's
created a
detached from
moat
your land.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah,
They've
it
separated it.
is
I will
gone.
say my dad came over and helped with some like yard stuff at my place. And one of the things that we did was there was a bunch of like mud and muck and stuff that had just kind of like gone under the deck. There's like a concrete patio, and then there's like the deck on top of it. And so there was like a bunch of mud underneath there. And so we were like cleaning all of that out. And my dad just was like pulling it all out, putting it into a wheelbarrow, and then taking it over to my shed and using that to just stuff it down into the holes
Oh
underneath the
god.
shed. Yeah, it was a lot, but I know they're back though because my dog has started going to like the back of the yard over by the shed and just spends a lot of time over there sniffing around. So I know they're back, but I haven't seen them yet. So yeah. Anyway, welcome to Warlocks and Waffles, a groundhog hate podcast.
The
Um
groundhog hate cast? Yo. That's not that yeah.
Yeah, this is my you've heard of fan cast. This is the hate cast.
This is a hate cast.
Yeah.
Hunter hates them so much
They
that
are they I took a
they're
level of ranger just so I could take favored enemy groundhog.
and he hunts them to the point where they came out, and they didn't see their shadow. Hunter just tricked them with light. We're apparently having an early spring. We are having an early spring.
They
But
might
it's because
they might
Hunter's like,
see they might see their shadow, but they'll never see me.
ooh, yeah. Hunter wants them out and about so he can catch them easier to get them away from himself.
Davy Jones says, "Did you though? Sounds like you're not good at getting rid of them." I'm very good at getting rid of them. They keep coming back.
They're just better at
I don't
surviving.
I don't want to do like the killing traps. Like I don't want to kill the groundhogs. I want them to be elsewhere. But at what point is it an invasion? Yeah, they're invasive in my yard. I don't like it.
I
Uh,
commend that you have. How long have you been at your place? How long
uh,
have you been going through? How many years have you been dealing with this?
I I moved in 2020. So we're February of 2020 is when I moved in. So like 4 years.
Okay. Yeah, you're getting, because in my head I'm thinking of like, or if it was me, my family, or anybody else that I know, like my immediate vicinity, it would have been like a year of like what, second year of like I think I know what's what, and by the third year it's like I gotta murder these groundhogs. Like I'm just thinking of how people would have progressed, and I'm
Right.
like, wow, man, you're still not at like murder,
I
but I could
we
see it in your
had
eyes.
we
I
had
could
we
see
had
it.
one season of we're gonna have a garden, and then didn't get any benefit of having the garden because they would eat everything.
Mm.
And then after that, I was like, I'm not replanting this garden, because it's just an absolute nightmare. Because it's not a we don't have a large yard. Like we would have to put up like a full secondary fence to try and keep them out of the garden area, or like do chicken wire or something like that. But then
I think
it gets
my
really difficult to like get the vegetables out of it at that point.
I think my cousin uses like a gardening box, like he raises it
Hmm.
off the ground a smidge, but I'm assuming that the underneath of that probably has chicken wire, so it's like you build a little frame,
Hmm.
chicken wire on the bottom, and then all the stuff. So it's like they can't eat through they probably could eat through the chicken wire,
Hmm.
but like what I mean. It's you've electrocuted that chicken wire. So
Yeah,
imagine like we're gonna get him from
I'm
below.
gonna
Ah!
I'm gonna create a like a steel bunker and grow my vegetables in it.
Yo, it's just you welding. It's you like having an Iron Man scene, but it's
Yeah,
like to punish groundhogs.
yeah. The cops show up at my place and they're like, we had we got reports that your shed might be a greenhouse, and you're growing like illicit stuff in your greenhouse. And I'm like, no, it's like cucumbers and tomatoes and stuff. Groundhogs are just dicks. Yeah, it'd be
It's
wild.
sir. We've gotten a lot of concerns, and we can see that you have several splayed out groundhog corpses. Do you need help getting rid of those? It's like no, I have it there to warn the others.
Have you made it to Act 3 of Baldur's Gate yet?
I've gotten to it. I haven't
Have
gotten far
have
in it.
have you been in like the Temple of Baal stuff yet?
No.
There are just like bodies everywhere, just like hanging and splayed out and
Oh,
everything.
maybe I did.
Um
Maybe I did get to that.
and like it's just that, but groundhogs.
It's just like
Um
this is
anyway.
all depicting the mind of a man that's lost it to groundhogs.
And here you can see his slow descent into madness as he
Madness.
waged war against tiny rodents.
Did he
Um,
win, or did we all lose?
the real, the real winners were the groundhogs we killed along the way. Anyway, we're
That's the entirety of our outline, everybody. We thank you for joining us. Uh, we
I
will
don't know
we
how
will
we
be back.
got to this topic. Um,
I will my unhingedness rubbed off onto the groundhogs,
mhm,
and then your rage for
yeah.
groundhogs took the
Uh,
ball and kept running.
yeah. I mean, if you've never seen a groundhog in a cage just absolutely losing its mind,
I have not.
you are consider yourself lucky. The first okay, last groundhog thing and then we move
Okay,
on.
last
The
yeah.
first time we caught a groundhog in the cage and my dad like came and picked up the cage to like take it to like take it out and release it. He he comes, he picks it up, he takes it, he brings the cage back, and the cage is filthy. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, yeah, you're gonna want to rinse the cage off. And I'm like, what what happened out there? Apparently, as like my dad took the cage, he put it in the trunk of his car, and like drove it out, and apparently the groundhog just started violently shitting. Just was like shitting everywhere. The back of his car was filled with groundhog shit.
Can I,
And
can I
it
tell
was
you?
just like covered the entire
Can,
cage.
can I tell you what my first thing was when I was gonna say?
Yes,
It
go
was
for it.
you were like, he's like, you're gonna want to watch that. And you're like, what happened? And then I was like, did your dad shit on the groundhog to teach it a lesson?
Yes, to assert dominance. Yeah, tell your friends. Don't burrow under the shed.
He opens the cage and it comes out. So he's like,
Oh,
go on, get, and it just comes out like eyes wide because it's seeing things. Like,
oh my goodness, that's so funny. Um, anyway, we're talking about time loops.
the first thing
Um,
on segment one says Hunter hates groundhogs. That has become the first
yes.
half of the show.
So Groundhog's Day. I don't know. I guess Groundhog's Day didn't inherently have a time loop thing to it until
No,
the movie, right? Like the movie ties into Groundhog's Day, but like that's kind of where
correct. That's
the
how
association comes up,
That's
right?
how I interpreted that. Yeah, that the Bill Murray movie where he has to live the same day
Right.
over and over again, uh, kind of became synonymous with
Hmm.
like a time loop, a humorous time loop situation.
Right.
Um, so when somebody says like they're gonna do a Groundhog's Day, like, well, yes, that could
They,
mean like,
they probably don't mean a small mischievous rodent.
yeah.
Is I guess it's a large rodent, right? Like
Yeah, no,
yeah,
small, I think, would be anything that's like
like
Chihuahua size or smaller, but
a
like
mouse is a
anything bigger than
small
that.
rodent.
Yeah,
A groundhog is a large rodent. I assume it's a rodent. I haven't looked into it.
I
Um,
believe it is as well.
it would
I
be
could be
wild if it
wrong, but I
wasn't a
believe it is.
rodent.
You know, we have a crap ton of facts. Um, uh,
Let's see.
no, it's a marmot.
A marmot.
Groundhogs are marmots, which are a type of large ground squirrel.
The groundhog, also known as a woodchuck, is a rodent of the family Sciuridae, belonging to the group of large ground squirrels known as marmots.
Okay, so it's a subspecies of rodent.
It's a large squirrel, essentially. I don't like that information.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, no, that's.
that's upsetting for some reason.
Hmm.
Anyway, so Groundhog's Day kind of became synonymous with this like time loop situation of like having to relive the day over and over and over again. For me, in my association, it is distinct from like a time loop of your own causing or like some powerful magic or something like that that is like a curse on you, in the fact that like a groundhog situation to me re- requires there to be like some sort of lesson is required to be learned in order to like end the
Mm.
time loop, or like there's something has to occur in order for you to like figure out how to like end it. It also to me is usually like very specifically a day, right? Like it's you're living the same day over and over again.
Yeah, and it's
Whereas
funny you say about the lesson thing because I think of it as like, yeah, they need to accomplish a goal, do a thing, get
mhm,
the MacGuffin, whatever it is, but like I think that it's usually like you have to learn. It's a lot of information gathering
mhm,
because you on the DM side or anything, it's not just you're like, okay, they go through this. It's a matter of well, they go through this, but then they turned left, so
mhm,
that thing still is over there. So it's like a lot of keeping track of stuff. Um, but yeah, it's a puzzle. It is a session puzzle
mhm.
that if you're lucky is one session. And I think you have a specific time loop situation where it's you was definitely went through it for a few sessions, right?
Oh, we were there
Yeah,
for a good long while. Yeah, we
yeah.
Davy Jones plays in one of my games. And he his group was in this time loop for, oh man, I don't even know. It was like it was the 7 sessions, something like that.
I feel like you told me
Um
something. It was like definitely more than four sessions.
yeah, it was a good number of
But
them.
like they were in it, so it wasn't like a complete punishment. Um, I know the only time I've ever used a Groundhog's Day was I guess I didn't let them learn something. It was probably my most railroady session I ever
Mm,
did
mhm.
because it was how I wanted my players to learn how strong they needed to be.
Mm, mhm.
So it was they woke up. I think the trick that is the best that anybody can use is being you don't have to be overly descriptive. Like, how we always say, like, oh, be careful how you describe the chair and all that kind of thing. Like, be
Mhm.
careful how you but like be overly descriptive in like the first moments because then they'll know when they're back to the beginning again. They'll
Mhm.
know it's just like if you describe a bird or the light
Yeah.
coming through a window, what I mean? One thing to let them know, oh, it reset.
Yeah.
But in my situation, it was a fortune teller. It kind of laid out options, and they took a path. But at the end of that path was a end game boss level situation. Like they
Mm,
went to one, they cleared out like three kobolds and like two goblins. It was a very simple encounter by a lake where a dragon turtle came out and
nice.
just insta killed them.
Mm-hmm.
They woke up the next day. It was after that. It was like a haunted mansion-y situation, and they fought a like a living rug, and it was like, oh, beating them. They did it, but then a Garistro just kind of busted out, and it was like this big hell demon
Mm-hmm.
took them out. And I think that the most memorable for us was they were at a graveyard, took out some zombies, but then the ground collapsed
Mm-hmm.
and the dragonborn fell down like a cavern into a cavern and rolled down something. And it wasn't until like somebody got a light down there that he realized it was a pile of money. It was a pile of gold. And then you just heard sparks crackling, and it was an ancient dragon
Mm-hmm.
underneath, and he like was instantly taken out by a dragon's breath. Um, and they were kind of like, what? But during the last one, it was like, those are the kinds of things you need to be, and you're nowhere near it now. Because it was like one of our first sessions. It was like the second or third session. So they were like not anywhere near ready for
Mm-hmm.
such like to even like fathom those kinds of
Yeah.
encounters. Uh but then it was just like, I think they might have gotten some magic items, but they definitely um I gave him like a healthy like boost in leveling, or I gave him like
Mm-hmm.
some different types of boons where it's just like, here's, dope stuff to go forward. This all it wasn't for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But like it wasn't they learned in my situation, it wasn't like they learned a thing because they got to. It was just like they were pushed through it. So it was like
Mm-hmm.
being used um like, by something that was in front of them. The way you said it would need to be like an eldritch something, a higher power, something else is like doing this to them. I don't think it could ever be like it's a party member like, hey, let's just keep hitting rewind on this day because it's for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but you did say something that I thought would be very interesting. And Matt, I don't know if the Adventure Zone. I know the Adventure Zone did like a time loop situation,
Mm-hmm.
but imagine like an isolated Groundhog's Day, right? Where if you like just reached like a boundary or something like that, like you could just leave that day.
Mm.
But if you went into the boundary, like it would be that day over and over again. I don't know how that would logistically work out,
So like
but
that everything within that boundary repeats the same day over and over again.
yeah,
But
yeah,
if you just leave, you're no longer
yeah,
in it.
yeah.
Interesting.
It's all like there's a in Dragon Ball Z, there's something called like a hyperbolic time chamber where if you go in it, for every minute in the real world you're in there, it's a year in there.
Mm.
So they go in there when it's like, we gotta train for 3 years. We gotta go in there and like get good.
Right.
We don't have the time for it or
Yeah.
something like that. But that's just stretched out to the point of but their limitation is you can only do it a few times, because if you do it more than once, your body can't handle it, type of
Right.
thing. Like you
Yeah.
can't cross the threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, that's the kind of limitation I would put on like, hey, all right, Groundhog Town, yeah, you can buy yourself time, but if you go in and out, your body will hyper age or something stupid like that. Like, you can't like I can't imagine weaponizing a Groundhog's Day. That's what I'm
Mm.
saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like that you put the caveat limitation of like it's out of their hands. They like there's a lesson or something to be learned, gained, or puzzled through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when you mess with time travel or anything like that, like if you want to do it good, you got to keep track of things.
Yeah, you have to keep
Like,
real careful notes. Yeah.
yeah, because then it it's real. It's I don't know if other people say embarrassing, but I know I hate it. Like when it's like, all right, I'm paying attention, and like the guy next to me is on his phone and he's not paying attention or something. But well, how does it feel when your DM wasn't? When you feel your DM's not paying attention,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're not
Well,
paying attention to your
and
own game.
and especially with a Groundhog's Day situation where it's like the same day over and over again.
Hmm.
Like time travel as a whole, you have to take really careful notes. Like I have a couple of groups right now that are doing some time travel stuff. But if you like are doing that, you need to keep very careful notes. If it's a Groundhog's Day situation, it's the same day over and over again. And so part of that is like figuring out the way that things work and the way that things are going to go, which means that you have to know like when something happens, you have to keep note of if if this then that, because it has to go the same way every time,
Mm-hmm.
in order for them to draw those like logical conclusions of okay, well, if we do this then this will happen, if we do this then this will happen. Like with my game that I did with Davy Jones's group, um they were in a town, and the town like resets every day. And so there's this, it's in this like pocket dimension. There's like this eldritch horror deity thing that is like resetting the town every single day. And so every day they wake up to the morning bell, and I put this like bell tower that every hour on the hour chimes. And so they were able to like keep track of, okay, now that we know what happens at what hour, like
Mm.
we know what we can go, okay, that bell just went off, we know it's 5 o'clock, we know that like this thing should be happening right now. And so there were like places that key individuals would be at different times. I had like a whole timeline laid out of like, if left interrupted, this is the flow that the town will take every day. If something interrupts that flow, like it can diverge, but like this is the flow that it'll take every day. And it was just filled with disasters. I have my list pulled up here. So the morning bells go off at 5 a.m. 6 o'clock, there is a circus wagon that packs up the wagon. The campfire is put out. 7 o'clock, the farmer's market in the town opens up. The village begins shopping. The tavern is empty except for the barkeep. At 8 o'clock, the mayor and his guards come to town, like come into the main town area. At 9 o'clock, the blacksmith has a horrible fire, and there's panic in the town square. A fire brigade assembles to put it out. At 10 o'clock, there's a town meeting in the tavern. At 11 o'clock, the person who mans the bank takes his lunch break. The bank is locked and empty for half an hour, and he also would bring the mayor like this lockbox that he needed to bring to him. At 12 o'clock, the fortune teller goes to this haunted building to investigate. At 1 o'clock, the spirits at that haunted building are angered and attack. At 2 o'clock, these two other characters meet up at the graveyard for a secret lunch date. At 3 o'clock, a rock slide crushes the storehouse and this other person's house. His wife is inside unless lured elsewhere. At 4 o'clock, the farmers report that there is this rot going through all of the crops to the mayor. At 5 o'clock, bandits prepare to attack the city, and at 6 o'clock, the bandits assault the city to rob the bank. During the fight, a bomb has a critical failure, blowing up the town square, and then everything resets. And like the whole town detonates from that blast. And so there are like a bunch of different like in big disasters that happen. And so the party had to like try and stop these disasters from happening, but when they would stop them, other things would happen. Like the timeline kept like not correcting, but like it kept trying to get to these disaster points. And my favorite part about it was allowing the players to be like, we're gonna try this. And if it doesn't work, we reset, we try again the next day. And every day they would wake up in these like in the graveyard, there were these empty graves. And every morning, every like reset, they would wake up in the graves and just like sit up in those graves. And then like, okay, well, what do? It's 5 a.m. The morning bell just chimed. Like, what are we gonna do?
Could they level up during this
I
time
did
loop,
not.
or
I
no?
did not allow any level ups.
I wouldn't have done that. Yeah.
A rule I have in my games is I don't do level ups unless you have like time to do like a what I would classify as an unpressured long rest. which is like it's not a long rest where it's just like we're on the road going to like a place and we're trying to get there as fast as possible, but we took a long rest, so like that counts, right? No, it has to
Hmm.
be an unpressured long rest. You need time to like recuperate, and readjust and retrain
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah,
like that.
that
So
makes sense.
I really only do level ups at the end of like you've completed this thing, cool, level up.
Hmm.
But yeah, there were no level ups in the thing, but they were in there for so long and they accomplished so much while they were in there that once they did leave, I think I gave each of them 2 levels,
Hmm.
because they'd been in there for a long time. But yeah, it was I had a lot of fun with it. My There are definitely things that I would do differently if I were to like do it again, but I really enjoyed the process, and I had like a long list of like all of the different NPCs and their notes on like this is where they are at different times, this is like their objectives, here is information that they know, but like they're these people that live in a time loop and they're unaware of the time loop, and so they're stuck in this time loop over and over again, and they're like just living their life, and as time has gone on, their perception of things has kind of like warped, their memories have kind of faded, um and so they don't have a whole lot of information outside of like their day, like everything else is kind of
Yeah.
like faded away.
What's so funny? I know that I'm pretty sure that one of my play. Oh, I could hear myself just a smidge. Uh, I know one of my players went for this, and this is how I got around it, and this is how I'm very cinematic with where I monkey's paw people a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Where I know that I had one player who was like, "Well, I'm not gonna go to sleep, or I'm not gonna go do this. I'm gonna stay here,"
Mhm.
and then it's just like, well, I shenanigans it or railroad it, which is the point where it's like, no, well, this is what's happening, and in my instance, it was like, oh, a Deva was like trying to teach him a lesson,
Mhm.
but I've seen this before where it was a Stephen King book where somebody went back to the past and he was like, changing certain things.
Mhm.
And he had this sense of, man, I went and did this and I just did it. And it wasn't anything crazy, but I went to go here and I had a flat tire. My
Mm.
engine blew out.
Mhm.
Um, they were out of this. And it was almost like time was fighting back, like almost like an immune system
Mm.
where it was just like like time antibodies were trying to stop him from causing something that was
Yeah.
gonna be not right type of situation.
Yeah. Rubber
Um,
rubber band time.
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
can you can stretch it out in a different direction to like go in a direction that it's not
mhm.
currently stretched in. You can stretch it out, but like it wants to snap back.
Well, you see what that is like. That is just a force of nature or a thing,
Mhm.
but like there can also be this sense of, could you piss off time,
Yeah.
and does it get malevolent? Like, does it
Mhm.
go like, stop messing with it? You know what I mean?
Well, I
Like, is
mean,
it just
the gods aren't
neutral
going
or
to
is
be thrilled about like people messing with time.
yeah?
Like it doesn't matter who you are, if you're like messing with time, the gods are going to get frustrated
I
by
made
that.
my perfect snow globe and you're messing with my perfect snow globe. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's almost just like there could be darkest timeline time loops where it's just
Mhm.
like the more you do, the worse it is.
Mhm.
Um and I I I would love to see the process of writing a choose your own adventure book,
Mhm.
because the way you laid it out was just like, all right, this person would be here if this and all that stuff, because there's
Mhm.
just so many ifs.
Right.
Um, but I'm so crazy with like butterfly effect
Mhm.
type stuff where it's just like my freaking flow chart would be way like way overly complicated. I don't think
Sure.
that for a session you need to go like the way you said it's just like here unless blank. I
Mhm.
think that going here and one, maybe two,
Right.
is where a person should go,
Right. And
but
that's
me,
why
I would
for
yeah.
I gave most of my like pretty much all of the NPCs had their like this is where they will be unless otherwise like
Yeah,
a,
and
a,
that, and
a
that
force acts upon them. But they
yeah,
also I also gave them each like this is their driving force. This is what they are trying to do. This is their goal of the day. And so
mhm,
they are always going to try and get back to said goal. So if something like takes them and they're like, okay, this character who is like the gravekeeper and is supposed to be in the graveyard like working at this time, if the players come and like take him and bring him to the tavern for some reason, when he leaves the tavern, he's going back to the graveyard because he has
yeah,
work that needs to get done.
mhm,
And so it makes it easier to like keep track of uh like objectives and locations of like here are these set locations, and here are these set objectives. So like this is what's happening right now, so this person would be in this location, like they're and just
I
connecting them that way.
I kinda liked what you said about the rubber bands
Hmm.
because, if you think about it like a pegboard
Hmm.
where it's just like this person's going to here and you stretch a rubber band, but if you take them further away from the peg they're trying to get to, they're
Hmm.
gonna try to snap back to that
it,
peg,
it gets harder and
and
harder to pull them away
yeah,
the farther you pull them. Yeah.
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 And you did like what I think everybody should do where some people like put too much effort, I think, into
Hmm.
NPCs. You know what I mean? Like you only need like 2 bullet points, maybe 3, but like a name and what they want.
Yeah.
And
choose
that
a choose
makes
an
it so
objective.
easy what you
Yeah.
said. Like just like this is what they want. So if they move them away, me myself is gonna make a scatter plot and think of all this stuff. It's a lot easier if you just go, they want to go back.
Hmm.
And then you don't have to do a lot of mental
Yeah.
gymnastics to
Well,
try to make that happen.
and it's one of the reasons that as I was writing out my adventure, I wrote this stuff about like because it is this like it's a time loop, it is this pocket dimension, like they can't leave, they're stuck in this perpetual day. And the player characters, as like time went on, every time they died in this time loop and like they died and then time resets, um every time they died, they took a point of like insanity from this table that
I
I
was gonna
had.
I was gonna
Um
ask about that. I was gonna
and
ask if
so
there was a
people
repercussion,
had
yeah.
things like they lost proficiencies in skills that they were proficient in. They reduced like their saving throws by one. They the one person let's see here. There's one that I just thought was so funny. Um Dun dun dun. You are constantly hearing things, and so you have disadvantage in all perception checks that rely on sound. I also had one that you see things like out of the corner of your eye, and so your perception is you have disadvantage on perception checks that rely on sight. One of the players had both of those had been picked up. There was
Mhm.
another one that was just like you developed a slight tremor to your hand, so like athletics, acrobatics, stealth, sleight of hand, all of those were reduced by one. Like there were all these like minor drawbacks, but the more times it happens, those start adding up.
Yeah.
Um, and so it became this thing of like, okay, we need to avoid dying if at all possible. Like how does that work? But because of that, it also gave me a justification for if this happens every time you die and the town like ends over and over and over again in this constant time loop, all of these people have had that happen. And so
Mhm.
they're like they've lost a lot. They're this insanity has crept in. And so it really does narrow them down to like they have their objective, they have their goal, they know what they are supposed to do that day, and they're trying to do that. And if you try and break them out of that, that is a they don't know what to do from that.
Mhm.
Like if you like uh you can pull them in a different direction, but if that band snaps and they're no longer connected to that other stuff, they don't know what to do now. And they're like very like broken by that. The party actually ended up abducting the mayor, and like pulling him out of the time loop and being like, this is everything that is going to happen today. And like
Oh wow.
getting
I
like
got you.
this is and taking him and doing all of this stuff, and like he didn't know how to handle that. Like he was breaking because they were like, and that mountain's gonna explode, and the share like the blacksmith is gonna catch on fire, and A, B, and C.
Mhm.
um and like there is some level of like inherent justification that the other NPCs will give for like, oh, this thing didn't happen that like is supposed to happen. Okay, we just keep going. We go around it and we'll do this thing. As long as they aren't pulled away. Um it makes it very easy to like play with that space if you are able to go, everyone is trying to go from point A to point B. And if you like add additional stops, they are still trying to get to point B, and they're going to like try and navigate that in the best way possible. If you like if they're trying to go from point A to point D, um
Yeah.
and you have like additional things that they're trying to do and stuff like that, that's a lot more moving pieces that you have to keep track of. The more simple you can keep it per individual, the easier it is to like make sure that all of those pieces are going to be moving correctly.
I like that there is, like, obviously the motivation as far as like the players, like, we will lose ourselves, we go crazy, there's detriments.
Hmm.
And I asked earlier about like level ups, and I think I think advantage is something that people like very easily give out,
Hmm.
because it's like, oh, you've done this X amount of times. So it's kind of like either you do the montage, like you just montage something because it's
Hmm.
just like you all do XYZ again.
Right.
So it just happens, or it's like, oh, you have advantage on all this
Hmm.
stuff. Um, but like, what I think is so interesting about like if they're doing X amount of time so often,
Hmm.
like, well, wouldn't they level up? Was like, well, a fighter or barbarian, maybe they wouldn't, but a wizard learning,
Hmm.
if a druid is meditating for
Hmm.
years, he's gonna level up. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, like what kind of, but they're not physically changing because they're
Right.
constantly going back,
Right.
but they're mentally and maybe spiritually, whatever, still getting more. So what would you
Hmm.
do in those situations? And I just thought about, well, what if somebody wanted to learn something that wasn't physically like a language?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's just like, all right, is there a detriment? Like, we're not going crazy. All right, I'm gonna learn Elvish.
Hmm.
It's going to take me the equivalent of years.
Hmm.
Can we do it? Type of thing.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
Uh,
if the detriments weren't something that would prevent them from doing so, absolutely. I think that there is a it's one of the reasons that like a time loop to me is different than like a time like a a timeline that is out of sync.
mhm,
The Feywild has like different time flow than the prime
mhm.
material. So if you go to the Feywild, there's a chance that time is like moved differently when you come back. Um to me that makes a that is a compelling like, okay, we I could, if you can control that, you can go to the Feywild, study Elvish for like 3 years, and come back and like a couple of hours have passed.
Mhm.
But if you're in a loop, it does make it more difficult, and especially the further into like studying something you get, because when the loop resets, you now have to like regain that ground. Like you
Well,
can't
do
build
you?
on any
I-
it
if it's something like you're being a doctor, yeah, your body doesn't have the muscle memory now
Sure.
because you didn't train it. But if you did it and like they're aware of it,
Right. But
then they
imagine that you're like writing a thesis for a doctorate or something like
mhm,
that, and every day all of your notes, all of your
your pages
research,
are
all everything you've
yeah.
written is deleted, and you have
Mhm,
to either rely only on what you remember, or
mhm,
like uh redo it. If I'm trying to learn a language, like flashcards and stuff like that,
Mhm.
you can't study that stuff if it's gone every day.
I'm just thinking of like you are plopped in a place where you don't speak the language and how you are forced to
Hmm.
eventually learn this means cup. This
Sure.
means what so like
Yeah.
like that, but what the issue that I'm thinking of is like I would allow it if it's like you're going to devote this much time, you're going to like guerrilla warfare, learn a language, learn a skill. You're not going to have like the muscle memory. Your hands will forget how to do it, but you will remember the technique or blah blah blah.
Hmm.
That might be one of them. And balancing the want of one, maybe two players to go, oh, let's try to use this, or oh, it's going to help us. Like that one player that's like they have a good idea
Right.
for them. They have a good
Yeah.
idea that will work if they execute it. But all right, cool, I can follow this thread with you. But what's everybody else going to do?
Hmm.
The barbarian is not going to spend X amount of time. He could spend the same amount of time. He's gonna hate it though. So it's gonna
Right.
be like, all right, I'll spend 100 years learning Elvish, and it's like he's gonna speak it at a third grade level by the end of it. And it's like you learned a little. The other guy's now fluent,
Hmm.
but he didn't have fun because unless it's like, oh, I want to role play stumbling through this. It's
Right.
balancing the wants and needs of everybody at the table.
Which I think is one of the reasons that it's so important to have a trade-off, right? Like there
I
needs
think,
to be
yeah,
some form of drawback.
you laid
Um,
out a good detriment system. The obvious, like there's a goal that are being pulled towards something like that. It's very easy, and I know I've fallen in the trap that where you make things too sandboxy. People can
mhm,
make things so sandboxy and so like, hey, solve this, and it's like, all right, you put me in New York, and then you said, all right, figure out the one place you need to be.
mhm,
I gave you the time to do it. And so it's like, oh yeah, we have plenty of time then to find the thing. And it's like, well, they're gonna flounder. There's gonna be too many options, or it's too open ended. So it's just like there's also that unless you are amazing with your notes and your
mhm.
improv and stuff like that, you run that risk of people are just gonna like some people are gonna latch on to different things, and
Oh,
then now you
absolutely.
gotta do that whole like, all right, well they're gonna go this way, so instead of like managing the one timeline, you're managing two timelines that are repeating in different ways, and how so it's just it for something that should be so contained. If you don't
It has a way of
explain the rules,
spiraling real
yeah,
fast.
if you don't
Yeah.
explain the rules, or at least um you know give the information needed to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to have them accomplish,
Mhm,
then it just becomes like, all right, we're in a never ending whirlpool. And for some people that might be fun, but then it's eventually they're going to be like, all right, well, my legs are tired, I'm drowning in this, I don't want to
mhm.
play anymore, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. Or I'm going to watch Balthazar over there, just all right, he keeps just like peeping on those gnomes. I don't like that, but he's just
Right.
gonna keep doing it. So a funny throwaway day is always, haha, look, they spent
Yeah.
the whole day doing something dumb. But then
100%.
it's like we left I let that happen. You know what I mean? You're
Mhm.
just like, well, at what point am I the bad guy? Because now
Right.
I'm allowing this instead of like pushing it on. I have to personify time and make time
Mhm.
punish them. I have to just break my own rules at that point.
Mhm.
Like I have to now break the thing because if you don't start off on the right foot with like whatever rule set you want to, it's gonna spiral. It's gonna
Yeah.
turn into
Yeah.
like, oh, great, fun. Mm.
Yeah.
But
There are absolutely like complications that arise from doing it. Um, but I mean, any game does. I think that a time loop game specifically, um, one of the one of the things that makes it fun is being able to keep track of like, okay, they need to figure out pretty quickly what they need to do. And I think that was the thing that was that I would change about mine, if I ran it again, was it should be clearer, um, what their objective is, what they're trying to do, because I kind of set them in there and they were like, "Oh, we don't know what's happening. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing." And like that's a good first session, but I feel like by the end of the second or third loop through that time loop,
Hmm.
they should have an idea of what the objective is.
Yeah.
And then be working towards it. And I think my group was in the loop without knowing what the objective was for too long. And so by the time they kind of figured out which direction they should be moving, it was like they had been in it for too long and were
Hmm.
just wanting to get out. Which at
Hmm.
that point is like, okay, well, do we just cut it short and like I start just, oh yeah, like let me push you that way, or do you like just disappear into the thing and then you're like, okay, well, we figured it out.
So how would you suggest remedying something like that? Would it be the remedy is like you make the story tighter on the front end? Are you more heavy-handed with like hints, or do you do the I'm a big fan of like your character would have pieced this together and then just kind of go, you know this by now. Like
So
which one is your approach? Because I think there's being overly descriptive and it's like
mhm,
I'm holding your hand. There's going, you have watched these things and you would connect blank.
mhm,
Or just like, well, I would have put this on the front end of the story, or I would have
yeah.
had a lore dump in the beginning. Like
So
what would you think would be the way to go?
there's two directions that I have started playing with. One is, um if I feel like the players need a hint, um, just being like, make a intelligence or make a wisdom like saving throw. And they make that thing, and I'm like, okay, so you're thinking on everything that has happened, and you realize that like A, B, and C, and like kind of give them a hint through like your character is looking back on this and has a realization.
Yeah.
The other thing, and I heard this in a I think it was a TikTok clip or something like that. But somebody was like, if you want your players to have information, if you want to make sure that they have it and like it's important that they have it, don't hide it behind a check.
Hmm.
Like don't make a perception check for something that you want them to have.
Hmm.
Just narrate it. Just say that they see it. Because if you hide it behind a check, now you're relying on them to roll high enough to get it, or you're saying, oh, make a perception check, and then they make the perception check and they roll bad, and you're like, oh, it's fine, like the DC was whatever. And it's like, well, then why have them roll it? Like just give
Do
that
you do the
information.
do you do the there is no DC, you're just rolling to see who notices it first? That's what I do that all the time. I'm
I
like,
have
everybody
done
roll
that.
perceptions, and I'm like, you're the one to pick up the wolves are
Yeah.
coming.
I've done that one. I've also done something I like is there's no DC to see it. Or there's no DC to find this thing. The whatever you roll is determining like how much additional information you find from it. So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you found the tracks. Like the tracks are evident. They are there. But like you rolled a 15, okay, you can tell these are wolves. You can tell that they came through here about an hour ago. Based on the number of them, you would estimate about 5 wolves. Like you can give that
Or dire
additional, yeah,
groundhogs.
these are clearly dire groundhogs.
Mhm.
Yeah, the you can give that information without it being a crazy thing. But you could also be like, yeah, you find tracks, they're kind of these large paw prints, some like claw markings. It looks like whatever it was came through here pretty fast, if they don't roll well. Um if they and then if they wanted to be like, okay, can I make a nature check to try and see like what type of animal this would be? Absolutely. That's an additional check.
Mhm.
You can roll for additional information. But the if you're like, I this is an important thing for the players to have seen in order to move the story forward,
Mhm.
just give that to them and let them like roll for additional things about it. I've also been doing where I just go like, I don't even call for the initial roll. It's just a like, you see this thing. And then like I give some descriptors so that the players can then go, oh, it sounds like it's like you see tracks in the mud. Um, oh, okay. What do they look like? They look kind of like these paw prints. Oh, a paw print. Okay, that sounds like some sort of animal. Can I make a nature check? Or like they're oh, how deep are they? Like how fast do these things look like moving? Can I tell how many creatures? Like all of that is stuff that you're then giving the players the ability to like ask additional information about it. You're also allowing them to like give a prompt that their character might be better at rolling.
Mhm.
So like if I call for a perception check from everybody, and that's what I'm doing over and over again is asking for a perception check, and some of your characters are not good at perception. Like I had a player, one of the reasons is I started like calling for some checks like this is that I had a player who had a garbage perception check, or a garbage like modifier for their perception. It was like a -3 or something like that. And they just stopped rolling perception checks when I would call for group perception checks because they knew that they wouldn't be the one to spot it. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, let's make this better for everybody at the table. And so now when I give information, then the party can go, oh, okay, I'm good at survival. Can I roll survival to like try and gain more information about this? And then they find out, oh, it's like it's not a wolf, it's a displacer beast. Oh, okay, well, I'm proficient in Arcana. Can I roll to see what I know about like displacer beasts? Sure, absolutely. Go for it. Oh, I'm proficient in history. Can I see what stories I've heard about them? Absolutely, go for it.
Mm.
Like you can open up those additional things to see like what your players are able to ascertain. And it gives them more flexibility on what roles are being used instead of it being like a okay, everybody make perception check. Can it be investigation? Can it be a survival check? Like yeah, it could be, but like I've already called for the perception check. And so if you're like now you're going in and doing different things, it's going to be different stuff. The other thing I started doing is being like uh everybody who wants to roll either this or this.
Yeah, I do that a lot.
And like what I'll often say is like make me a religion, arcana, or history check.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
whichever one you roll, like you'll get different information depending on which thing is rolled.
Exactly. Yes.
Like
Yes.
if it's a religion check, you're going to get more of the religious side of it. Like what
Correct.
is the
Love it.
following, like that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. If you're getting history, you're getting stories and folklore and that sort of stuff. If you're rolling arcana, you're finding out like more about the like attributes of the creature. Like you're going to get different stuff depending on what you're rolling.
I have a lot of newer players that don't know the difference between roles.
Mhm.
So a lot of times what I do is I'll flavor it as where I was just like, give me a role. They'll say what, and then I'll say, tell me how you're going about this.
Mhm.
And then I'll be like, that sounds like a, and then I name the multiple things.
Mhm.
On mechanic side, you try to see if it's like, all right, let me pick an intelligence and a wisdom one, just in case they have one higher than the other to give them like, oh, I want to do the thing I'm good at. But if
Mhm.
they're like, no, I suck at this, but I do want to do it the way that it's like this. My guy would want to do the animal handling one. He's not great at it, but he would try. It
Right.
still gives like I say this several times in a session because it's like I'll play with like a lot of younger teens and I'll be
Mhm.
like, low rolls don't mean guaranteed failure. It
Absolutely.
might just be it's not as cool as you wanted it to be, or you just don't get as much but it doesn't always mean nothing. You didn't do it. It's impossible. It's just it's paw. Like I'll do
Mm-hmm.
the paw prints. It's like, oh, you can just tell they're moving fast, or it was rushed, and
Yeah.
like it was a good amount of them. But like just emphasizing like that people is just like, oh, it was less than a 10, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
failure, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like just that stringent, like, oh, it has to be this, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like as long as we're not messing with the numbers, like tell me the flavor of how you want to do it. It
Right.
might be more like this.
And
And yeah,
some groups, depending on the group, some groups love a failure. Like
yeah.
love a like, oh, I rolled horrible, so like mess with me about it. Like one of my groups, if they roll low, like if they roll low enough, they're going to get actively bad information because it's fun for the group.
Oh,
So like you look at the paw prints in the mud and you roll a nat 1 and you're like, oh yeah, this is a natural formation, like this is how the mud forms in this
you,
in this area. I had a group recently roll an insight check on this guy who was like clearly sketchy, and one of them rolled a nat 1 and I was like, you like this guy's a stand-up dude. Like he's so like, you have never met somebody who you trusted more. This is just like, you feel like you could share your darkest secrets with this person and they would be like respected and kept. And that party member was like, yeah, guys, I think we can trust him. Like we can do it. And like the second lowest insight roll was like an 8 or something like that. And so everybody else was like, no, we can't. Like he's clearly not to be trusted.
do you use investigation checks correctly? Because I keep forgetting I use them wrong, and I no,
Ooh,
and intentionally because I don't.
what are they supposed to be?
I use the now. You tell me if this is how, if you agree or disagree. But
Sure.
whenever somebody's like poking around or something like that, all right, give me a perception check if you're using your eyes and ears and you're trying to just see if you notice
Mm-hmm.
something, and or give me an investigation check if you're getting all up in there and poking around. The
Mm-hmm.
difference between I'm gonna stand at the bookshelf and kind of like like see if something jumps out at me,
Right.
and me going to the bookshelf and rifling through,
Mm-hmm.
pulling books, and really trying to suss out things, because that's wrong apparently.
Mm.
Because it's supposed to be perception is the noticing part. Investigation is supposed to be the logic, putting together the puzzle pieces part.
Interesting. No, I
Yeah,
do it. I do it similar to how you do.
yeah, I
Um,
keep forgetting that
and
the way investigation's like described is about noticing that investigation is about looking for something that isn't immediately obvious.
mhm.
um and investigation allows players to piece them together. It's about logic and figuring out how complex things work,
Interesting.
and that's not
Um,
the way I use
I
it.
feel like I would allow investigation to be used that way.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah,
But
exactly, but
I agree. I feel like they are two sides of the same coin of like, perception is your ability to spot something or like hear something or something like that. And investigation is your ability to find something if you are like
you're
getting
getting all up
getting
in
in
it. Your
there.
hands, yeah,
If
it's
you're
one's more dangerous, I always say, like, because you
yeah.
listening and looking is different than you going up in it and like
Well, in
rifling through the
I
things, and
feel like I feel like perception is something that I call for most of the time. Like I will be like, "Hey, roll a perception check to see if you spot this." Whereas if you say, "Can I go look for this thing?" I'm probably going to say investigation. Like if you are getting like hands-on looking for something, that's investigation. If you're just standing in one place and keeping your eyes open, that's perception. I Yeah, like that's how
but
I
so
invest
so when it comes to
clarify
looking
the
for
2.
traps,
Mhm.
when it comes looking for traps, then which one will you use?
I do, if you're actively looking for them, I do investigation. And if you're like walking down the hall and I know that there's a trap there, I might ask for people to make a perception check to see if they spot it.
Now,
Um
But now
but
technically
I
though, isn't that
if
wrong if
somebody
we go
was
by as written?
probably,
You know,
but like
it's just one of those, like, in the back of my head, it's like, if I'm looking, that's my perception,
right.
that should be a you know what I mean? It's just like, I'm looking for the traps with my eyeballs,
Mhm.
and the way it's written is, "Oh, I'm looking, so that's my perception skill,
Mhm.
not my investigation," just by as written-y type
Yeah.
of blank, but I would always do it the way you described it.
I think, um I think if you're just like if you for me investigation is a extension of perception. Like if you were walking down a hallway and you're just like I'm keeping my eyes open for traps but I'm not actively like searching for them, that is perception, but like I'm going to use your passive perception for that because that's just you like keeping your eyes open and trying to notice them. You're not like taking an active step in doing it. If it's if you're actively searching for it, then I'm going to have you roll investigation to like see if you find it. That's my preference. I feel like that
Yeah,
just makes it it puts a clearer distinction between the two for me.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I
uh,
think that's how I interpret the words, so
mhm,
I had not read the rules, instead I was just going by, like, athletics versus acrobatics. One's more of, like, a Captain America muscle situation, the other one's
mhm,
parkour, like,
right.
I just would go through
There
each
are
one.
there are times where they're interchangeable, but like most people have a pretty clear like in their head, this is
Mhm.
what this is what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
This turned from Groundhog's Time loops to arguing the semantics of skills.
Yeah,
Uh,
you said something a little bit ago that like I was like, "Ooh, I have a thought on that." And then we moved on and I lost the thought and I don't
I'm so
remember what it
sorry.
No, you're good. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, it I I feel like the perception versus investigation is something that like it it's table to table for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Like some groups are going to be very much on the like I I need to roll perception check for this. I need to roll investigation for that. For me, they're kind of interchangeable. But
Mhm.
investigation feels more hands on to me. If you're getting hands on, it becomes investigation. If you're like just using your eyes and ears and like other
Yeah.
senses, that's a perception.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I mentioned this before, and when we go back to homebrew stuff, there's one rule that, like, I keep telling myself I want to use and I never do it. Um, I hate the assist, like in D&D, the assist, the help action where it's just like you just give somebody advantage type of thing.
Hmm.
Or I saw it one time years ago where it was, instead of you helping somebody and it's just you give them advantage, you can give them your modifier.
Yeah, yeah, you've talked about that one.
Yeah, and I
I
just
do
so
like that.
'cause then it makes it feel more hand like, "Oh, I have a +5 arcana. I wanna give my barbarian the +5. I wanna let him suss it out, but I'm gonna say, like, a key piece of information that helps him figure it out." You know what I mean? So that
Right,
way you
you're
both feel cool, you know what I
right.
mean?
They're finding all of the information and, like, asking questions, and I'm giving
Yeah.
answers to those
Mhm.
questions, but they're the one putting it together.
Yeah.
It also allows for things like a bard or another, like, face character who doesn't want to be the one, like, doing all the
Yep.
talking, can be like, I help out by, like, giving some insights about, like, who the person is or, like,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like I'm prepping the
Yeah.
person for
Or they
this
could be behind
interaction.
them like Cyrano, like, "Alright, say this.
Right,
Alright, now
right.
now now you wanna lean this way. Alright,
Get
go
the
for
like
it."
earrings of message where
Mhm.
you're just like, ask him about his shoes. Yeah.
Have I told you this is the last thing I'm gonna say about homebrew stuff. Have I told you how, like, I give them, like, I jank up sending stones? Because
Mm-mm.
like, in more than one game I've done this and I love it. I'll have that it's like some sort of janky artificer or something like that, wants to give them, like, communication stones or something like that, some way to communicate so they don't have to metagame or worry about,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, they're over there." Um, it's one time I had them demonstrate, otherwise they'll just describe it, of him literally smashing a sending stone,
Mm.
and then kind of making like almost like a piercing pagoda earring gun and kind of like clipping it onto them to attune it. But it's like a you'll be able to communicate, but it's like a drastically short range. It almost makes it
Mhm.
like they can cast message,
Yeah.
but the signals are very like, it's like as if I don't want to say shooting like a laser gun or radiation gun. I say be careful if anybody or anything's in between your line of sight
Mm,
because they might hear it.
mm.
So it's
They're
kind of
more
like you go
open
like
signals.
it's like
Yeah.
having like a walkie-talkie where somebody else is on the channel type of thing.
Mhm.
Uh,
That's great. I love that.
I just was it was in my brain. I was like, if I don't say this out loud, it's gonna kill me that I didn't mention it. But we're
No,
over
I like
time.
I like that a lot.
Like, uh, but Hunter,
Yes,
today's Groundhog's Day,
it
right?
is.
So I have some groundhog fat. No, this is me. Just I was gonna start the show again. Um, is there anything else you want to say, or I think you made some really, really good points because it's such a fun idea, and it's so easy to get wrong
Yeah.
because it's like, oh yeah, they just do it again. It's like that's not the only rule. If
Mhm.
you have to put some limitations, restrictions, rules, repercussions, or something, because otherwise, like I I know it can, if you unless you are just going to make it railroady, which cannot be fun with a purpose, it just becomes floundering and hey, it's cool, playing, but we're not doing anything. You can only have
Mhm.
so many sessions of like we moved 3 feet.
Right.
You know, so I think putting all those things and taking those things and taking that extra, let me instead of note cards, let me just jot down
Mhm.
some more finer points about things. It really, really
Yeah.
helps make for like
Well,
a successful time loop, successful
when
Groundhog's Day.
the Adventure Zone did their like time loop arc, um the one of the things that I really liked about the way they did it was Griffin made it so um once you had reached things, once you had like
Mhm.
found a pattern through like a path through the
Yeah.
story, you could just repeat that. So you
Ooh,
can just
I'm sorry, I have to go soon.
oh, you're good. You
Yeah.
you could just repeat that path and get to wherever you had been before. It was almost like save points, but it's a new
Yeah.
time loop. But you're like, we repeat everything we just did, and now we're here, cool, and we continue from there, which makes for the story having more like ground that you're covering. But yeah, there's a ton of great ways to do time loops. Time loops have a lot of possibilities. Um, Try it out with a home game. Try it with just a like a one session thing. If it doesn't work, like it's one session. Try something new the next time. Do it as a one shot or whatever. Um, Thank you all so much for being here. I know Junie has to run, so we'll wrap
Oh yeah,
up.
I have
Uh,
a cranky 2-year-old that's like cereal, cereal.
all good. Important information.
You can
Uh,
see her. You can see her busting into the scene.
Important information. Tomorrow is eat ice cream for breakfast day. That's important for everybody